imagine stumbling into a cluttered apartment where lifeless eyes stare from every corner, not from dolls, but from the mummified remains of young girls, dressed in vibrant clothes, their chests softly chiming with music box melodies. This wasn't a horror movie set, but the chilling reality of Anatoly Moskvin's home in Nizhny Novgorod, Russia. In 2011, police uncovered a nightmare that shocked the world. A scholar turned grave robber who transformed 29 corpses into dolls to keep him company. This is the twisted tale of a man whose obsession with death blurred the line between genius and madness, leaving families shattered and a nation horrified. In the quiet city of Nizhny Novgorod, Russia, Anatoly Yurievich Moskvin lived an unassuming life. Born on September 1st, 1966, he was a brilliant academic, fluent in 13 languages, and a prolific writer on history and linguistics. By his early 20s, Moskvin had already earned a PhD in philology and worked as a journalist for local newspapers. His true passion, however, lay in the macabre, cemeteries. He roamed graveyards across Russia, documenting forgotten graves and publishing books on the subject. To those who knew him, he was an eccentric but harmless necropolist, a self-coined term for a student of death and burial sites. Moskvin's fascination with the dead began in childhood. At age 9, he claimed to have been buried alive as part of a bizarre game by local children, only to be rescued. This traumatic event, he later said, sparked his lifelong interest in mortality. As an adult, he traveled thousands of miles, photographing and cataloging graves, often sleeping in cemeteries to immerse himself fully. But beneath this scholarly pursuit lurked a deeper, more sinister compulsion. By 2009, Moskvin, then 43, had married Olga, a fellow academic. They lived in a modest two-room apartment filled with books, maps, and artifacts from his cemetery expeditions. Unbeknownst to Olga, who was frequently away on work, Moskvin had transformed parts of their home into something out of a nightmare. Over the years, from 2005 to 2009, Moskvin had exhumed at least 29 bodies from local graveyards. These were not random victims. They were the corpses of young girls, aged 3 to 29, whose graves he had meticulously studied. He targeted those who had died recently, often from illnesses like pneumonia or accidents, using knowledge gleaned from books on ancient mummification techniques, such as those used by the Incas and Egyptians. He treated the bodies with a homemade solution of embalming fluid, salt, and baking soda. He wrapped them in cloth, dressed them in colorful clothes, and even applied makeup, wigs, and glasses to give them a doll-like appearance. Each doll was propped up in the apartment, some seated on chairs, others leaning against walls. Inside their torsos, Moskvin installed music boxes that played eerie tunes when activated. He named them affectionate, childlike names like Katya or Nastya, and spoke to them as if they were alive. In interviews after his arrest, he described them as his children, claiming he had adopted them to protect them from the loneliness of the grave. "I wanted to bring them back to life," he said. "They were my family." Moskvin's wife, Olga, later revealed she believed these figures were elaborate mannequins or artistic installations related to her husband's research. She had no idea they were human remains. The couple's young daughter, who lived with them, played near the dolls without suspicion. The gruesome secret unraveled in November 2011, thanks to a tip from cemetery workers. For years, families in Nizhny Novgorod had noticed disturbed graves, empty coffins, missing plaques, and signs of digging. One particularly distraught mother, Svetlana, whose 13-year-old daughter Zhenya had died of pneumonia in 2002, had her suspicions confirmed when a gravestone was found overturned. Desperate for answers, she and other families petitioned the police. Investigators initially dismissed the complaints as vandalism, but persistent reports led them to Moskvin, whose name had appeared in local records as a frequent cemetery visitor. On November 1st, 2011, police raided his apartment. What they found shocked even seasoned officers. 29 mummified bodies, some up to 9 years old, scattered throughout the 260 square foot space. The smell was overwhelming, a mix of decay and chemicals. One doll, identified as Zhenya, wore a pink dress and had a music box playing a lullaby. Moskvin was arrested on the spot. He showed no remorse, insisting he had done nothing wrong. "I gave them a second life," he told investigators. Forensic experts confirmed the identities through dental records and DNA, notifying horrified families. Svetlana collapsed upon learning her daughter's body had been desecrated for nearly a decade. Other parents described waves of grief and revulsion, with one father saying, "He turned my little girl into a toy." Moskvin was charged with desecrating corpses, a crime carrying up to 3 months in prison. But prosecutors sought harsher penalties given the scale. In 2012, a psychiatric evaluation deemed him schizophrenic and mentally unfit for trial. He was committed to a high-security psychiatric hospital instead of prison. As of 2025, he remains institutionalized, though appeals for release have been denied. In rare interviews from confinement, he has reiterated his innocence, claiming his actions were a form of necromantic art. The case exposed flaws in Russia's cemetery security and burial practices, leading to reforms like better grave monitoring and family notifications for disturbances. Families of the victims formed support groups, holding memorial services to rebury their loved ones with dignity. The doll, clothes, and accessories were returned where possible, adding to the heartbreak. Anatoly Moskvin's story is a stark reminder of how intellectual brilliance can coexist with profound mental illness. What began as a scholarly interest in death twisted into a delusional quest to conquer it, blurring the lines between life, death, and madness. In a nation still grappling with its Soviet-era secrets, this tale of mummified dolls continues to haunt, revealing the darkest depths of human isolation and obsession.